Welcome to the Dreamboat. Remember, you can join the DRI for just £30 a year. You get access to more content, including videos and discounts for our events. It's a great way of finding out more about our work, joining our dream community, and supporting this podcast. Details in the show notes and at driccpe.org.uk/membership. Welcome to the Dreamboat podcast, a place where we talk about everything dreamy, all you wanted to know about dreams and where you might find some answers. My name is Dave Billington, and I'm a psychotherapist, and I'm also director of the Dream Research Institute. And I'm joined by fellow psychotherapist Laura Payne.
Hello, I'm Laura Payne, and I'm also part of the Dream Research Institute. And we're called the Dreamboat because we are actually recording our podcast on a beautiful canal barge here at Little Venice in London called the Boat Pod.
We'll be looking at dreams, talking to guest experts, and answering your questions.
Now, let's get on with the episode.
For many of us, dream time is like a stroll in a zoo or in a pet shop. Our dreams are proliferated with animals in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes our encounters with our pets or favorite animals are soothing moments in our dream world, but sometimes they become terrifying beasts of nightmare proportions.
Yes, what do these various encounters mean? Can we actually place significance on our dream animals, whatever shape, size, or ferocity they come as? Freud thought animals related to our sexuality. Well, he would. We want to joke there. Whereas psychologist Joseph Campbell thought their presence meant a spiritual awakening. So, a broad range of interpretations.
And today we're joined by dream expert in this field, Christian Gerike from Sonoma State University in California, who studies this and other areas of dreaming. So welcome, Christian.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Can you just tell us about what you think animals are doing in our dreams? Why do we have so many dreams of animals?
Well, there's all kinds of reasons why they would be in our dreams. Let me start off with reading you something from James Hillman's Dream and the Underworld. And in that he says, generally, animal images are interpreted in depth psychology as representatives of the animal, that is, instinctual, bestial, sexual, part of the human nature. I have found over and over again in interpretations in the popular media that the default of what an animal is in our dreams is almost invariably it's something about our instinct. And I quite agree. I think that's a good point. But I think that's a limitation on what animals are in our dreams. And when looking at an animal in a dream, it is dependent upon what the dreamer is experiencing. What have they experienced in their daily waking life, emotional life, past history? What are their anticipations for the future? And therefore, I think it's really hard to just nail down what an animal is doing. And I have found over the years in talking with people, when they have animals in their dreams, they're invariably impressed with it. There's always some kind of awe, a certain numinosity, may we say, of the animal appearing in the dream. And people are really touched by that. And the relationship that they have to that animal is going to be dependent upon what their interpretation is, what their feeling is about the animal. For example, I live in a culture that has animals as companions. I have a dog. I've always got a dog. And other cultures, dogs don't mean a whole lot. Matter of fact, in 80% of the world, the dogs run free and roam in the wild and in cities. And the people, in those cultures, when they have an animal dream, is going to be, especially one that eats dogs, is going to be very different than a culture where we have dogs as our companions. I dream about my dog on a regular basis. Now, the fact that she's laying on my bed with me while I'm sleeping probably has a lot to do with that. So how the animals come into our dreams and what they mean is dependent upon the dreamer themselves. And I think what is really crucial here is the concept of metaphor. And I think too many people think that a dream symbol just has some inherent meaning. And it doesn't. It's a metaphor. It's a symbolic structure that stands for something else. And that depends upon the dreamer themselves.
I'm imagining that like us and like many people who work in psychotherapy and work with dreams, that you're not a fan of dream dictionaries that tell you this symbol means that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think dream dictionaries have their place. And I find what's interesting to do is if one is kind of, I want some ideas, sure, go to a dream dictionary, but try 2 or 3 and wonder why they have different statements about what a dream means. If there's such a definitive dictionary, they wouldn't be able to do that. On the other hand, I find that I go to Ted Andrews has a wonderful book on animals called Animal Speak. And in looking at that, I'll get ideas. And I just use it as fodder. I never go, oh, that's it. Sometimes I go, aha, oh, that is what my dream feels like. But generally it's, oh, that's an interesting idea. I wonder what else there is. So roaming through the dream dictionaries is one way of actually making good use of them. Depending on one, I don't think is a very good idea.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I can remember an experience of my own, a dream that I had. It must be 25 years ago now. The essence of it was living in the little house I grew up in, the first house I grew up in, which was very small, and in an area where there were black bears and grizzly bears in British Columbia in Canada. And this gigantic bear, almost the size of the house, poking its head, or trying to poke its head through the upstairs window of this little cabin. And when I had the dream, I was actually living in France and went to a dream dictionary in the house, which was a Jungian dream dictionary, and it said, aha, the bear is it was in French, it was the mère terrible, so the terrifying or the overpowering mother, and it gave me something to think about. But yeah, what would another dictionary have told me about bears, I wonder?
And also how many people had an experience in their childhood or had that sitting in the background of the family folklore that there are bears out there.
That's true.
Which is going to impact as well.
Yeah, that bear is a good one to use. I had a bear in my dream many, many years ago, and I made this long list of what bear could be. And since dreams love to pun, one of my first starting points was I changed BEAR into BARE. What am I trying to bear? What am I trying to expose? What is trying to come out? What am I bearing under? What am I trying to bear up to? One can just go on and on with that kind of thing. And so it's important to see where that actually fits into one's own life and what that meaning has. And what it has for me, if I had exactly the same dream, we'd have probably, most likely, guaranteed, different meanings for what it is that dream would mean to us.
Yeah, and obviously there are those personal associations for me in that. We were talking to Katja Valley from Gerike University a little while ago, and she was talking about sort of threat simulation theory, something that she's very interested in her work, and mentioned that children dream of threatening scenarios a lot more. They also dream of animals and of frightening situations with animals, even though most children now grow up in urban environments where there aren't dangerous animals around, there aren't wild animals around. I was wondering what you make of that.
I think that's interesting in looking at what the children dream. They have a tendency to dream much more about animals than adults do. And as children age, the amount of dreaming of animals tapers off until about 16 to 20. The ratios become the same as most adults. And in thinking about children dreaming about animals, one thing that has occurred to me is that being young, you're still closer to your animal nature. You haven't been enculturated. You haven't experienced the human world a whole lot. You haven't been indoctrinated as to what it is to be a human being. And it doesn't surprise me that the animals appear as when you're younger. Also, I find interesting that in talking about the enculturation process, as children age, they shift from dreaming about wild animals to domestic animals, as if, as a human being, we are becoming domesticated ourselves. In using the Gestalt concept of dream work, that all aspects of a dream is an aspect of ourselves, which I think is true, but it's not the only way to work with the dream. The domestication is coming forth in the children in their dreams as they're becoming acclimated to growing up and becoming adults. One thing that I think is interesting about the animal dreams in the children is I've wondered if they don't represent the human adults in their life, overpowering, overbearing beings that are much bigger than they are, that control their lives. I recall a dream where a little boy was talking about the elephants were walking around and stomping and eating people. And see, I could really relate to that little kid having the experience that the adults are just stomping all over him all the time and that they're eating him up.
Wow, yeah, I can think of that experience of being a child, and the legs of the adults all there, and you can't see what's happening, and
Yes.
everything's up above you somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah, they're like elephant legs.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we obviously progress from childhood into perhaps more gentle dreams about animals, unless we've got some deeper fears, I suppose.
Yes, I would say that. How can I put this? I would wonder if animals do express our deeper fears, and I'm afraid I'm a bit biased here because my animal dreams are always positive, and so I've had like one nightmare my whole life, and I have found that that's actually an exceptional situation. So
I'd say,
some
yeah.
people, yeah, some people they feel like an animal is chasing them. As Laura just mentioned, a fear. There's something chasing them. There's something that they're afraid of. I think that definitely comes up, and I know that people have encountered animals in their dreams where it really scares them. But it's nothing that I'm familiar with, fortunately.
Yeah. You were talking before about for children that kind of the animal nature that's maybe there and being domesticated as we become adults and we enter the adult world. And I was wondering if you could, just so I'm not making assumptions, could you say a little bit more about what does that mean, an animal nature, an animal part of nature? What does that include? Is that like Freud's concept of id?
Oh boy. I'm not much of a fan of Freud, and so I'm not sure I can go there. I think that we have, as we become more and more adults, we move farther and farther away from nature, the natural world. And here I'm going to go back to the instinctual part about animals. We don't necessarily rely on our instinct. We are real strong advocates of rationality, overcoming feelings and instinct. And I think that to some degree, when we're having animal dreams, we are being invited to go back to our instinct and pay attention to what's going on in our world in that sense. What is going on in the natural world? I got a beautiful little statement by Jung here. Let me pull this out. He says, consider animals. There is not one that conceals its overabundance of prey and lets its brothers starve as a result. There is not one that tries to enforce its will on those of its own kind. And this is beautiful. Not a one mistakenly imagines that it is an elephant when it is a mosquito. And in the animal worlds, they are what they are. They don't try to be anything else. And I think in the human world, we're trying to do all these different things, multiples of personas. And I think that in our dreams, when we're experiencing the animal, we're going back to our animal nature. I think we're going back to nature in general. And we are an animal. That's just fundamental.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that that's a reminder that we are an animal and that we do exist within a natural world.
Again, children having those dreams, they're maybe more connected to their instinctual self. As we get acculturated in some way, we're becoming more aligned with that kind of rational, external side of ourselves. And is there a way that when we have our dreams of animals in adult life, is there a way that we can use those to reconnect with our and to be friends with our instinctual nature?
I think it's really important to work with one's dreams. And in that sense, we can come back to a connection to nature as we understand what it is that's being stated in our dreams. I'm a member of over the years of several dream groups. I'm in two right now. And I find that as we discuss our dreams in the groups, things come forth that we hadn't thought of. And as we think about this on our own, we go, oh, well, I had a dog in my dream last night. I wonder what that means. And you kind of kick it around a little bit and think about it, and you go on your way. In a dream group, somebody will grapple with that. They will try and come to an understanding of what the dog meant in the dream and have suggestions and broaden one's perspective. And I think we can go back to understanding our basic natural selves by exploring that in the dreams. Not coincidentally, when we have dog in our dream, I always like to spell it backwards. And I think that has an indication of the spirituality that the animals can be bringing up within us.
Yeah, I was hearing you talk. I was also thinking about both the sort of iconography of language, semiotics. Jung was obviously interested in the whole notion of, archetypes and transcendent images. And I read something that you'd written about the eagle as an example. So the eagle, if you were an American, has a real deep-seated piece of iconography that's imprinted within you, which, and from childhood probably, but you would, if you had an eagle in a dream, particularly if you were an American, it would have quite a deep symbolism, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yes, I would think so. It's for one thing, it's the representative of the country, and the bald eagle is our symbol. And there's all kinds of metaphorical possibilities of what an eagle could mean. It could mean be able to fly high and strong. It could mean having keen eyesight. But it could be those are on a personal level things. It could also be an indication of the collective, our country as a whole. The eagle, right now, I'd say America's in fairly bad shape. And I wouldn't be surprised if I had a dream with a battered eagle in it, where as a collective, our feathers are ruffled, let's put it that way. And so that would surprise me that the dream is referring to the collective. And I think that's one of the things to work with animal dreams. Is it referring to basic nature? Is it referring to something about myself? Let's say I have a dream with a wounded animal in it. Is that about me? Am I having a health problem? Is my body something wrong with it? Or is the wounded animal representative of the culture and society, and there's a wound of some kind?
And Jung would say it could be all of those things. And that's the beauty of, dream interpretation, once you start looking through the onion layers of a dream in particular.
Yeah, dreams are multi-level. They have so many. I mean, there's so much packed into them. They're all the meanings and the thoughts and stories are like condensed into this really tight package of images. And I've been in situations where dreams have been unpacked. And there have been 4 or 5, working in a dream group, there have been 4 or 5 different takes on what the dream could mean. And they can all be correct. There's just almost an infinite amount of information and feeling sitting inside a dream.
Obviously, we're always really interested in dream groups because at the DRI, obviously, we run several. And I noted during my time in a dream group, as you quite rightly say, I would perhaps bring a dream about one of my dogs or whatever. And somebody else within the group would have a really profound insight because they'd been working with me in my dream world over, say, several months. And I might be just, doing a top line interpretation. And they've remembered something else I've said that has taken me deeper into the dream and made me think, oh, no, that's a good point. The dog can also mean this.
Yes, absolutely. I think dream groups are invaluable. I really don't think we can entirely plumb the depths of a dream on our own. And I think that's an important and interesting aspect about the social adaptiveness of dreams. Those of us who dream and are willing to share that information and share those dreams are socially interacting in a very, very deep way. Dreams are not shallow experiences. And I think that one of the adaptive processes of this is going back to cultures, tribal entities that have as a standard practice the sharing of their dreams. I think that leads to the cohesiveness of their society, and therefore it increases their survival ability. So we can have evolutionary survival aspects coming out of just the sharing of our dreams because there's so much profundity there. And it's hard not to be honest in a dream. That's one of the characteristics of them. May not be obvious, but there can be a really hardcore honesty. And in sharing that honesty with other people of your own quote unquote tribe, there's a real unification and a solidifying of the social unit itself.
It's something we really encourage through this podcast, but also at the DRI Center for Dream Studies, the idea of sharing dreams as something kind of intrinsically good that connects us to one another as human beings.
It was also making me think of one of our earlier podcasts with Professor Mark Blagrove and Julia Lockhart, where they were, some of the work that they've been doing, the dream study work they've been doing, have come to a very similar conclusion that you've just mentioned, that in many ways there's a social cohesion about sharing dreams that has developed the human notion of empathy, which has been a sort of binding force in society. And animals take us there because they are very often shared symbols with very similar meanings for all of us one way. I know there are differences within societies we've discussed, but in terms of the animal instinct part, we often have very similar interpretations around that.
Mm-hmm. It's the sharing of dreams in a cohesive society makes me think of the role of the shaman. And shamans typically have an animal as an ally. And they find these in their dreams, and the ally helps them to navigate the world and work with their society, and to the information that the shaman gets from their animal ally, they share with their social group. And it is very common that one of the main roles of a shaman is to help assist in the hunting, in the sense of finding where the animals are, when they're going to be there, how many they're going to be. And the shaman goes into the trances they have, and they experience their animals, their allies, and they get the information that they need, and then they share that information with their social unit. That is one of the absolute fundamental roles of a shaman, is to pass on that information for the well-being of the social unit.
Yeah, I was intrigued by that because, yes, the notion of a spirit guide. I was also thinking in Western civilizations, in ancient Greece, for instance, which we've talked about before, in the cult of Asclepius, the sort of god of healing and medicine, to have a dog in your dream was a symbol that there was healing present, and often the dog would bring the image of the healing with it when it came in the dream. So very similar to the notion of the shamanic spirit guide animal, also giving meaning as well.
And in the Asclepius situation, the dreaming was, the temples were an incredibly controlled, conducive situation for engaging in dreaming. And I've always been so taken by the idea of dreaming in a room where there's snakes slithering all over the ground. And,
Yes.
and
Spot the snake in your dream.
I've described that to some people, and they just, oh my God, I couldn't sleep in a situation like that. But this is a good example of how the culture approaches it. In a different culture where snakes are seen as healing, well, that would be desirable to have the snakes around. So once again, it's dependent upon the dreamer and the culture and the context that they're in as to what the meaning is of that animal in the dreams.
I'm really struck speaking with you and listening to you speak today, the range of sources and the range of different kinds of knowledge that you're drawing on. And I was wondering about, you've talked about dream groups, you've talked about your own dreams. Obviously, there's the historical and the anthropological. What other sources were you drawing on to work on your study and to support your writing?
I use anything and everything. My dream work is actually my second career. I've been doing this for since about 2007. And prior to that, I was an anthropologist in environmental consulting. And one of the tenets of anthropology is a holistic approach. That is, everything is fair game for information about the cultures that we're studying. And so, as far as I'm concerned, anything that will help inform me is of value in working with dreams. And I have found that coming from an anthropological background, it was just fantastic preparation for dealing with the dream world. I see anthropology as the study of culture. I see culture as the template we have in our mind as to how our culture and society should be functioning and how we fit into that. And a large part of that is symbolic structures. So when I encountered the dream world and I realized it's metaphor and symbols that we're working with, I was able to take that image from accepting that, say, in a tribe in Africa, the way they do a dance is representative of their relationship to the cosmos. It's not just a dance. I was able to take that and translate it over into the psychology of dreaming with no problem whatsoever. And it just captivated me. I thought it was just fantastic working with the metaphors and symbols and dreaming coming from an anthropological background.
Have you also been drawing on, I was thinking about, dream content research that, Hall and Vanderkastel, those kind of people who are looking at, what to me is quite a dry way of looking at dreams, which is, sort of counting, how many times people dream about dogs, how many times people dream about cars, whatever it might be.
Yes, absolutely. I've used quite a bit of their studies in writing my graduate paper, and I spit out the statistics. And I'm very scientifically oriented. On the other hand, the thoughts and feelings that people have about dreams are as important as the hard data. So I can work from the hard data, which I think is interesting, to the thoughts that people have about this is how I want to express my dream in a piece of art, for example. And it's the expressions can go anywhere, and the insight that I can get from dreaming, I will accept from any source of information. I remember in one of my one of my papers, I got some view of what images and dreams are that I felt amplified by Ezra Pound's statement of what an image is. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Well, that kind of enriches things a bit. So we have hard data, we have feelings, we have art. There's just all kinds of ways of going about this.
Yeah, I think that's what makes dream work so very exciting. That, as you say, you can approach it from so many different angles, all of which add to the interpretation. It's that sort of, I like the idea of it's from Jung that it's the psyche knocking on the door each night and keeps throwing up different ways as if to say, look, please pick me, work with this. I've got a message for you in here somehow, whether it's through a dog or a monkey or whatever.
The healing snake.
The healing snake, yes, exactly. And one of the things I saw that you had written, which because I'm conscious of time, which I was very interested in, I suppose an extension of that idea, is that dogs commonly appear in the dreams of the dying, sort of like an end-of-life animal in some way.
Yes, that's, I think which is the cause and which is effect. We have the Cerberus
Hades,
guarding the
yeah.
underworld. Yes, Hades,
Yeah.
and actually Cerberus guards Hades not from people getting out, but from people getting in. You want to
Yes.
make sure that the right people get in, and those that aren't ready yet shouldn't be there. And it somehow seems that in our culture, we have that as part of our template of who we are and what we think. But did our feelings about dogs come from that, or do we already have some kind of a primal feeling about dogs? They're the first domesticated animal we have, and that domestication goes back about 12, 15,000 years, and we've intimately grown up together, and in the evolutionary sense. And so the dog as a psychopomp, somebody carrying me over to something else, I don't know what the archetypal basis for that might be, but it is definitely a template in our culture. Interestingly enough, birds also appear regularly in relationship to dying. And I read a wonderful paper by Mormon from the University of East Bay here in the San Francisco Bay Area on birds and bird activity around people dying. He didn't touch on dreams, but when my wife passed, the night before she passed, I had this fantastic dream about a huge, large bird flying away from me. And to me, when I woke up, that was clearly the representation of my wife getting ready to move on. And it was a very profound feeling. That was one that struck me just full of awe and numinosity when I had it. It was just an astounding dream. It was a real short one, but it was very powerful nonetheless. So yes, we have these animals that we associate, and for some reason, birds I can understand fairly easily in the sense that they fly up into the sky, they go into the quote unquote heavens. They have a certain spirit to them, an ability to fly that we just can't even begin to fathom, and it's very impressive that they do that. And so I can understand that connection of going from the earth to the heavens as a bird can be a representation of our moving on to another world. The dogs, I haven't figured that one out yet, and I find it real interesting. The only thing I can retreat to here is spell it backwards, and it might tell you a lot about where we think we're going when we die.
Well, that is a really profound way of looking at it. I was sitting with something a bit more, earthly, I guess, which was thinking about in our times of being nomadic before we settled into communities and cities and became farmers. Dogs were our traveling companions. And, as we discovered new landscapes and as we crossed thresholds into new worlds, our dogs would have been with us. And of course, they do keep us safe, or they have kept us safe. I think we keep them safe now, probably more than anything. At least in the case of my dog. Yes. But I wondered about that, that there's that idea of the journey of passing on.
I like that. I think that's a very good take on it. They have been our companions for literally thousands and thousands of years. And I think a dog appearing in a dream, for me, it's always been positive. I'm always happy when I see my dog. I often have dogs that I don't recognize, but I can clearly recognize my dog when she shows up in my dreams. It's very, very distinct. Dogs have, just to play with it a little bit, dogs have qualities of obedience and loyalty. They have unconditional positive regard for their person if we're treating them at least halfway decently. And so I wonder in my dreams when that comes up, is that indicating that there's something that I'm being loyal to that I'm not paying attention to, or there's something that I'm being disloyal to that I should be paying attention to? It can go all kinds of ways, but to take these basic symbols and experiences that we have with an animal and translate it into the concepts of what that might mean, and then use that for working with the dream.
As I always say at this time, I feel like we could talk about this all day, but time has gone by rather quickly. And it's time for our dream of the week, I think. And we were very keen to hear a dream that you were going to share, not about a dog, but about a mouse, if I recall.
Yeah, a mouse asks for help. I think you've called this dream.
Yes. Where is my mouse dream? Right here.
We'll get you to read it out for us, and then we'll have a quick interpretation between the three of us, shall we?
Okay, that sounds real good. A mouse asked for help is a dream I had on July 8th in 2015. Here's the dream. I am walking, and there are several mice. As I continue walking, one of the mice is following along to my left. I finally realize it is trying to connect with me, to get my attention. I vaguely notice it has something tightly wrapped around its neck. I ask if it needs help, and it answers yes in a very high-pitched, almost electronic sound, but clearly understandable. The mouse is now in front of me, facing me. I reach down to look at what it is wrapped around its neck, and it is on very tight and should not be there. I start to remove it, which reminds me of the small Velcro type of strap that is used to bind electric cords. End of dream.
So what did you make of it, or what do you make of it now?
I got to let me just read a couple of comments I had here that I made to myself about this dream.
Sure, yeah.
I had this dream at the conclusion of my psychology graduate work and the beginning of preparing my graduate paper. The mouse, as a representative of the animal world, is telling me that my graduate paper is a way of helping to bring an awareness to people that they can become more sensitive to animals through their dreams. This is the first and the only dream in which an animal has spoken to me. I'd love for it to happen again. It was just a thrill when it happened. My journal article was finishing up the depth program, is on the subject of animals in our dreams, and having this was just delightful. From a broader perspective, on an even greater, perhaps deeper level, I am getting a message that through my work in general, I can be of assistance to the world of animals to help them in their current ecological plight. I find this encouraging, though I did find it a bit intimidating. There's also, where's my other note here? I was also thinking that this was operating on a collective basis, that the animal, the mouse being, say, a symbol of computers, like a computer mouse. And the mouse was pointing out that the technological world was running roughshod over them, and that we were literally tying them up and choking the life out of them.
Wow. Yeah.
So those are some of my takes on that.
Yeah, I find that quite interesting. Were there any other associations with mice for you?
No, not really. That's one of the few animals that I haven't had as a pet. As a kid, I had tons and tons of pets of all kinds, but I never had mice. And I have had mice invasions into the house that I had to deal with. Unfortunately, trapping them is a very unpleasant task. So there is that association, but I don't really have any other association with mice.
They do kind of cross that wild and domesticated line, don't they? They can be pets, but they often live wild, but they also live wild in our cities, in our domestic environments. And they're not always the welcome guests in the house.
No, not always. It's they can make quite a mess when they get in.
Yeah.
There's often a lot of fear for some people also associated with mice.
That's right, yeah.
The classic cartoon image of the woman standing on the stool with a broom batting a mouse in a kitchen away. So yeah, it's got to. I was struck with the fact that the dream happened after you'd written your graduate paper, and there you are saying that obviously you thought of the computer mouse, and I was wondering whether, like the mouse, you'd been chained to that computer writing your paper so long you were glad to escape.
That. I like that. I think that's really good. Yes, that could very well be.
We've all been there.
We have all been there. It was when you said it, I thought, oh God, that feels so familiar. Oh, dear.
I was saying, often when we work with dreams in our dream groups, in the psychotherapeutic dream groups, we would ask people to identify with different aspects, images, characters in the dreams. And in this one, here's this mouse that really wants to be heard. and it has something, restricting its neck and restricting its throat, which I often think of as something that stops our expression actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I would probably ask somebody to, if it felt safe, to tune into that sense of what's it like to have that restriction and what they're aware of in that part of their body. And I was wondering if that had any resonance for you about not being able to speak or express.
I think that's a great point. It didn't have any resonance then, but it just had an aha for me just right now and thinking about that. I thought, I was trying to express myself. That dream came at the beginning of doing my graduate paper. I'd already started doing the rough drafts and all that kind of stuff. I hadn't really launched into it yet. So I hadn't expressed myself yet. And it was still bottled within me and hadn't come out yet. So I'd never thought of that way of looking at it. And I like that a lot. Before we go, could we just briefly touch on animals themselves dreaming?
Oh, yeah, that would be delightful. Yeah, please.
This is an experience that I think many people have had. And I just use my dog as a personal example. She's laying there clearly sleeping, and all of a sudden she starts making funny little noises, twitching, and her paws start moving back and forth. And if you go and look, you'll see that she's got REM. You can see the eyes, they're moving back and forth. And obviously it's dreaming. And the hardcore scientists say, well, we don't have any dream reports. They can't tell us. Well, that doesn't impress me, that attitude. And the studies that have been done with various animals, one of the earliest ones is Michael Jouvet from France in the 1950s. He was able to do surgery on cats to bypass the atonia, the sleep paralysis feature. And when cats went into a sleep mode, they didn't have their muscles controlled anymore, and they could act out what they were doing. And they were pouncing, they were stalking, they were in fear modes. And one can imagine that that's what they were dreaming, and they were clearly asleep. They weren't awake. One of my favorite studies is from, where is it? The Alaska Pacific University did a thing with lobsters where they monitored a lobster, lobster changing its,
was this the octopus?
The octopus, the octopus.
That's right.
Changing its colors as it caught an animal and ate it. And then that exact same sequence of colors would happen when the octopus was sleeping. And we can readily imagine that the octopus was dreaming about that experience of catching the animal. And one good last one is a rat study done by MIT and one from the University of College of London. Was they were monitoring rat brain waves while the rat was running a maze. And then when the rats were sleeping, they monitored the brain waves once again, and they were getting like a 1-to-1 correlation between running the maze and the sleeping. And they could actually tell where the rat was in the maze from its sleeping brainwave patterns. So to me, that's a pretty good good indication of you kind of collect all that information together that animals are dreaming also, which makes perfect sense considering that evolutionarily it had to come from somewhere. And we've probably been dreaming for hundreds and thousands, if not millions of years.
Well, and we know that even simple cellular creatures have a kind of a sleep cycle, a rest cycle. Mm-hmm. So even things that are not mammals, that are not animals per se like us, have some sort of cycle that they go through. That doesn't mean that they dream, but there is something about the cyclical nature of our consciousness or of our life that is shared through all sorts of life forms. There was another one, I don't know if you saw this, earlier this year, late last year, about spiders dreaming. There's a species of spider that is quite translucent when it's a baby, when it's young. Uh-huh. And because it's translucent, they can see its eyes. And when it's in a resting state, it has eye movements that are like rapid eye movement, like REM sleep. And it's just the one inference they could make. But then they were thinking, well, maybe spiders are dreaming too. And why not?
And dreaming of us.
Yeah, why not? And when we look at these animals dreaming, we see patterns that are so analogous to our experience. We see REM, we see the brain waves are similar. We see them going through sleep cycles, down into sleep, coming back up into REM. And the analogy is a real strong one, and I think it's a very valid one.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for bringing that back as well, because I think that's a really interesting take on it. It's not just about the animals in our consciousness, but what's in the animal consciousness as well, which we do need to pay more attention to.
Something for us to follow up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Christian, thank you very much indeed. In fact, I just thought I'd sort of end on a small quote from Hillman, which I think you gave me. Animals wake up the imagination. Animal dreams can do this too. They really wake people up. Animal dreams provoke their feelings, get them thinking, interested and curious. I really love that as a quote, so thank you very much.
That's wonderful. And that's exactly my experience of how people react to animals in their dreams.
Christian, for people listening, where can they find out more about your work?
Well, I do have my regular postings on California Dreaming on Facebook, and I'm there. I have a real constant presence there. So if you just search for California Dreaming, you'll be able to find me. And I welcome people anytime. And if somebody wants to get a hold of me, that's one way to get in touch with me right there is through Facebook. And then if we have see that there's need for further conversations, I'm glad to engage in conversation with anybody about dreaming. I think it's a wonderful thing to be promoted and for us to discuss with each other.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much again. So thank you for listening, and keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams.
So, thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Don't forget to like us and leave comments on your favourite podcast platform. As I'm sure you know, that's the way we build an audience for the Dreamboat podcast and also to spread news about dreaming. And as we said, there are many ways you can share your dreams at the DRI, the Dream Research Institute.
Yes, we have courses, events, and workshops, and we want to hear from you. So check out the show notes for links, or find us on Instagram and on our Facebook page and on our website at driccpe.org.uk. And if you want to explore your dreams further, or you would like to support us, you can join the DRI as a member for just £30 a year. As a member, you will get discounts for all of our events and short courses. You'll get our newsletter with latest dream research news, and we'll also be adding other special member benefits during the year. Of course, members' dreams will always be given preference for reading on the podcast Dream of the Week slot. So go to the link on the show notes and become a DRI member today. Keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams.